Have you ever had the feeling that the world around you might not be exactly what it seems? That everything, your choices, your memories, even who you are, may be far more fragile and questionable than you realize? This unsettling idea is the basis of some of philosophy's most provocative theories, those that make us question not only reality, but also the sanity of trying to understand it. Philosophy, after all, has a unique power. It makes us feel like enlightened geniuses when we glimpse a new idea and at the same time plunges us into an abyss of doubt where everything seems to slip through our fingers. Today we're going to explore 5 philosophical theories that can literally mess with your head. These are concepts that challenge the most basic certainties about reality, and if you think about it too much, can completely change the way you see the world. Take a moment to breathe. How do you feel right now? Are you confident that the place you're in, the people around you, or even your very existence are real? Don't be so sure. Get ready for a journey to the edge of reason, where each theory will take you one step deeper into this labyrinth of possibilities. And in the end, the only thing you might take away from this journey is one question. Do we really know anything? Imagine waking up one day with an idea that you can't get out of your head. What if everything around me is an illusion? This disconcerting feeling has a name, and it's solipsism. Solipsism is one of the oldest and most disturbing philosophical theories. Born from the question, what can I say with absolute certainty? The answer for many philosophers was that we can only be sure of one thing, our own existence as conscious beings. After all, the fact that you think, feel, and are here right now is undeniable. But beyond that, everything else, the world, people, even time could be a creation of your mind. Sound extreme? Consider this. Our senses, the ones responsible for interpreting the world, are limited and sometimes misleading. Have you ever had a dream that was so real that you woke up confused, believing that it had really happened for a few moments? The dream was the only world that existed for you. Now think that what we call reality may just be a more elaborate version of that dream. Something our mind has created to comfort us, or perhaps deceive us. This theory isn't just a figment of modern philosophers' daydreams. René Descartes, one of the most influential thinkers in history, began his philosophical journey with a radical doubt. He asked himself, what if an evil genius were manipulating my perception of the world, making me believe that all this is real, when in fact it is not? It was from this doubt that his famous conclusion was born. I think, therefore I am. But even Descartes, who believed in the I, was unable to prove that the rest of the world was more than a mental construct. What makes solipsism so disconcerting is that it puts you at the center of the universe, but at a cost. If true, this would mean that you are completely alone. Your friends, family, even the traffic noise outside, would just be creations of your own mind, projections made to fill the void of being isolated in a lonely universe. Now stop for a moment and think. How would you know if this were true? Perhaps you've never questioned whether the world around you is real because it seems consistent, tangible. But how can you prove that everything you see, hear, or touch isn't just an interpretation generated by your own mind? And here's the deepest blow to this theory. If solipsism is real, not only does the world around you cease to exist as you thought, but it becomes a mirror. Everything, from the landscapes you admire to the people you love, can be a manifestation of who you are, what you feel, what you desire or fear. The truth is that solipsism, although almost impossible to prove, is equally impossible to disprove. It makes us look at life in a new light. If nothing is certain apart from me, then what does it really mean to exist? Before getting too lost in these questions, another even more radical doubt arises. What if you're not even real? This takes us to the next level of philosophical provocation, the brain in a vial theory, where even your own consciousness could be an illusion. If we can't trust the world around us, can we at least trust what we call our own mind? Is this content making you reflect and sparking new ways of thinking? If so, click subscribe button just below the video. It's a way to say thank you and help me bring more content like this to those who need to reflect on life. Imagine you wake up one day, but everything seems artificial. The world is there, your home, your work, the people you love, but something is wrong. You feel like there's an invisible hand controlling everything. This is the essence of the brain in a VAT theory. A philosophical provocation that invites us to imagine the following scenario. What if you were just a brain floating in a laboratory, connected to a machine that simulates all your experiences? Everything you see, hear, feel, or remember would be an illusion created by electrical impulses. This idea, popularized by philosopher Hilary Putnam, is like a technological version of solipsism. In solipsism, the doubt is internal. Is everything around me a construction of my mind? In Brain in a Vat, the danger is on the outside. Here you are not the architect of the illusion, but a prisoner of it. Think of Plato's myth of the cave, where people saw only shadows on the wall, believing them to be reality, or the dilemmas of movies like The Matrix. Would we choose to leave the simulation to face the hard truth, or would we prefer to remain in the comfortable illusion? The most disturbing thing about this theory is not just the idea that the world around you can be fake, but what it says about you. If everything is manipulated, including your memories, choices, and desires, where is your freedom? What's more, if the simulation is perfect, what does reality mean? If you believe you are living something, is it no longer real for you? This doubt may seem paralyzing, but it's also revealing. Brain in a Vial forces us to face up to what really matters. Does the value of life lie in absolute authenticity, or in the way we experience it if everything were an illusion? But you could still feel joy, sadness, love. Wouldn't that make your experience meaningful? And here comes a crucial reflection. Even if you were a brain floating in a machine, reacting to artificial stimuli, you would still be you. Because reality may be questionable, but the way you experience it is unique. And so this theory leaves us with an invitation to question not only what is real, but how we choose to make sense of our experience, even in the midst of uncertainty. This doubt leads us to the next question. If not even external reality is reliable, is our identity at least solid, or are we also constantly reconstructing ourselves? 708. This is what the ship of Theseus challenges us to discover. Imagine a majestic ship built in ancient Greece, known as the ship of Theseus. For years it sailed the seas, braved storms, transported heroes, and witnessed history unfold. But like any object, its parts began to wear out. First a plank in the hull was replaced, then another and another, until, as the decades passed, no original parts remained. And now, is this still the same ship that originally set sail, or at some point did it cease to be the ship of Theseus? This dilemma, which seems like a simple curiosity, actually touches the heart of one of the greatest philosophical questions, identity. If every piece of the ship has been changed, what makes it what it is? Its shape, its function, or something more subtle, almost intangible? Now stop and look at yourself. You, like the ship of Theseus, are also constantly changing. Every cell in your body renews itself over the years. Studies show that every 7 years, almost every cell in our body is replaced. The brain you used to think now is biologically almost a stranger to the brain you had when you were a child. But it's not just the body that changes. The mind is also fluid. Your memories, which seem so solid, are rebuilt every time you access them. Emotions, contexts, and even new information can alter them. Modern psychology states that our identity is not something fixed, but a narrative that we continually construct. Consider a long relationship, a decades-long friendship, or a marriage. Both of you have changed. Your tastes, values, and experiences have transformed over time. If what connected you at the beginning no longer exists, what keeps the relationship alive? Carl Jung believed that the human psyche is like this ship, always rebuilding itself. He saw this flux as essential to our journey. For Jung, the I is not something fixed, but a process of continuous evolution. His theory of individuation, which talks about the path to becoming our most complete version, is built on this idea of constant transformation. But for some people, this concept can be frightening. After all, if we're always changing, who are we really? Perhaps the answer lies in accepting that identity is not a fixed point, but a dance between what has been and what is to come. Think of the ship of Theseus, not as a static object, but as a symbol of the human potential to transform, to adapt, and to continue being, even when all the parts change. And if you look at your life, you'll see that this is not a distant metaphor. Think of yourself as a child. What dreams did you have? What fears did you carry? Now look at yourself today. There are parts of that child that still live in you, but so many others have changed, and yet you are still you. What this theory teaches us is not just about change, but about continuity. The idea that even if the parts are replaced, there is something in the essence, a function, a memory, a story that connects us to who we were. But here's the provocation. What if that essence is also changeable? This leads us to a new question. Do we become so many different versions of ourselves over the course of our lives that at some point we stop being who we were? These questions challenge us to think about what it means to be and prepare us for the next theory, structural realism. After all, if even our identity seems to escape solid definition, what can we say about the world around us? Are we really connected to what is real, or do we just interpret what we can perceive? Have you ever stopped to think that everything we call reality might just be a set of interpretations? Not a description of what the world is, but of how it appears to us. This is the essence of structural realism, a theory that challenges us to accept that we never know the things themselves, but only the relationships and patterns we can observe. Consider how we saw atoms over a century ago. They were seen as tiny solid balls, the fundamental units of matter. But as science has advanced, this idea has been replaced by something much more complex. We discovered that atoms have a nucleus surrounded by particles that move in unpredictable patterns. Later, we learned that these particles are not even objects in the traditional sense, but rather waves or fields depending on how we measure them. What we thought was solid was actually empty, and our perception a convenient simplification. This idea that we can only access the shell of reality is echoed throughout science. We don't know things as they really are, only the effects and interactions we can measure. But what if we can never go beyond these appearances? Is our perception giving us the truth, or only what we are able to interpret? Here, Plato's myth of the cave comes into play. Imagine people chained since birth in a cave, where all they know are shadows projected on the wall. For them, those shadows are the only reality. But what if one of them were freed, stepped out of the cave, and saw the world as it really is? The sunlight would reveal something completely new, but also difficult to accept. Plato suggests that we are like these people. We live in a cave of limited perceptions, mistaking shadows for reality. Research by neuroscientist Donald Hoffman in 2015 reinforces this point. According to him, our perception is not optimized to show objective reality, but to help us survive. Just as a trash can icon on a computer doesn't represent the circuits and commands that actually delete files, our senses are shortcuts. They give us enough to interact with the world, but they don't show us the essence of what's around us. Now bring that to something closer to us. Think of a map of a city. It shows streets, buildings, points of interest. But what doesn't it show? The texture of the sidewalks? The smell of the bakeries? The sound of the traffic? The map is not the city. It is a simplification, a structure created to facilitate understanding. But by relying on the map, we forget everything it leaves out. Structural realism forces us to face this gap. How far can our tools, be they maps, science, or language itself, take us? And what do we lose by simplifying the world? This idea is explored in the film Arrival, in which linguist Louise Banks tries to decipher the language of aliens who don't perceive time as we do. For them, past, present, and future exist simultaneously. At first, the mission seems impossible because Louise and her team are stuck in the human way of interpreting the world, linear and sequential. But as she learns the alien language, something fascinating happens. Louise begins to perceive reality differently. What seemed like an insurmountable barrier, our limited mental structure, turns out to be the greatest challenge to understanding the universe. This example is powerful because it illustrates what structural realism teaches us. Our perception of the world is not only limited, but shaped by our own tools of interpretation. Are the laws we discover really the truth, or are they just a reflection of how we see the world? just as the map is just a simplified version of the city? This question is not just philosophical, but deeply practical. How do we interact with each other? What do we understand about the people around us? Do we perceive them truthfully? Or are we always interpreting their actions and words through filters we don't even realize we have? Structural realism and the myth of the cave force us to question if even our best tools only give us shadows. What is light? Is there a path beyond what we can measure and perceive? Or are we trapped in an endless cycle of interpretations? What if even these shadows and reflections are illusory? What if the very basis we use to understand reality is manipulated or false? This question leads us to the next challenge, the experience machine, where the choice between authenticity and illusion defines who we are. Imagine that you are faced with a choice: to live a perfect life full of joy, success, and without any suffering, but all within a simulation. Every sensation, memory, and achievement would be indistinguishable from reality. Inside this machine, you would never know you were in a fake world. Would you enter? This is the dilemma presented by the experience machine, an idea proposed by philosopher Robert Nozick. He created this mental experiment to question one of the pillars of utilitarian philosophy, the pursuit of happiness as the ultimate goal in life. Nozick asks us if everything we value in life could be synthesized artificially. Would that be enough? Think about it for a moment. If all that matters is feeling good, then the experience machine seems like the perfect solution. It can simulate the deepest love, the greatest achievement, even the highest meaning. But most people hesitate to enter.
Why?
Nozick argues that this hesitation reveals something essential about us. We value more than just pleasure. We want authenticity. We want our experiences to carry weight, our choices to matter. In other words, we don't just want to experience happy moments. We want those moments to be real. This theory makes us reflect on how we live in the modern world. Are we already, in a way, inside experience machines? Think of social media, where people create perfect versions of themselves, carefully edited and filtered to appear happier or more successful. Each like or comment feeds a cycle of validation that often doesn't reflect reality. Are we disconnecting from the authentic in exchange for superficial happiness? And there's more. The experience machine also challenges us to question our priorities. Are we chasing experiences because they have real value, or because they simply make us feel good in the moment? As the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard observed, the search for immediate pleasure can lead us away from a deeper sense of existence. The discussion doesn't stop there. Cinema and literature have explored this idea in various works. In the movie Matrix, for example, Morpheus offers Neo the choice between the blue pill, which would keep him in a comfortable simulation, and the red pill, which would awaken him to brutal reality. Neo's decision reflects what many of us want to believe, that we would rather face the truth, however painful, than live in a lie. But would we do the same in practice? However, the experiment machine is not just an ethical or philosophical dilemma. It is a mirror that forces us to face how we live our lives, how we pursue happiness and meaning, and how we often choose shortcuts over authenticity. And here's the final provocation. If you knew that full happiness was just a button away, but that everything about it was a sham, would you press it? This question is more than a theoretical provocation. It's a call to reflect on what really matters, because in the end, perhaps what makes our experiences valuable is not just what we feel, but what we live. The pain, the struggle, the growth that make them unique. Now that we've explored the tension between authenticity and illusion, one last question remains to be addressed. If we can't fully trust reality, nor our own perception, how can we find meaning in such an unstable world? To do this, we need to look into the deepest philosophical abyss, the idea of nothingness, the existential void that both terrifies and transforms us. With each theory we explore, we challenge the foundations of what we believe to be solid. We think about the possibility that the world around us could just be a projection of our mind. We consider that even our memories and identity are constantly being reconstructed. We look at science and realize that what we call reality may just be a convenient interpretation, far from being the absolute truth. And finally, we face emptiness, not as an absence, but as a mirror that reflects the meaning we choose to give to life. But what does all this tell us about ourselves? About the world we inhabit? About existence itself? Perhaps the greatest gift of these theories is not to answer our questions, but to expand our capacity to question, because deep down, the act of questioning is what makes us human. It's what takes us out of the passivity of accepting everything as given and puts us in a state of constant search, not for definitive answers, but to understand who we are in the midst of chaos. Now stop and think. What is most disturbing to you? The possibility that the world is a simulation, that you are a brain in a vat, or that perhaps your identity is just a collection of ever-changing memories. What's more, what do you feel when you face the void? Is it fear, or is there an invitation hidden behind that fear? An invitation to create meaning where there was nothing before? What if there is no single truth? Does that invalidate everything we experience, or is the beauty of life precisely in its uncertainty? Think of the music that moves you, the conversations that mark you, the moments that make you feel alive. Are they less real because the universe can be a simulation, or, on the contrary, are they even more significant because you chose to give them value? Philosophy doesn't tell us what is right or wrong. It invites us to look at the world with curious eyes and to accept that the answers we are looking for may never come. And that's not a problem, because the real mystery is not in solving all the questions, but in living fully, even without answers. And here's the final provocation. If there's no way to prove that nothing is true, then all that matters is what you choose to believe. Choose to question. Choose to create.
Choose to connect.
Perhaps the greatest paradox of all is this. The emptiness we fear so much is not an enemy. It is a blank canvas waiting to be filled with whatever you decide to put there. A gesture of love, a search for knowledge, a leap into the unknown. So, what will you do with the void? The only certainty is that it's waiting for you. Leave a comment. If you had to choose one of these theories to live by, which would it be? Or would you prefer to continue with all the open questions? And remember, knowledge is the path to true freedom. Count on me and subscribe to Full Moon.